And then other transport subsectors like railways, waterways, seaports, airports, and urban systems. So you can see that really we cannot live without infrastructure. It's just impossible. And around the world, infrastructure is becoming an increasingly attractive asset class to equity lenders and business people to invest in. Lagos State, for example, now is building a light rail from Okokomayo to Marina. We've identified 7 rails, infrastructure in Lagos. We call one the Blue Line. The Blue Line is the Marina to Okokomayo. If you're familiar with Lagos, that means in front of LASU, Okokomayo, Volkswagen, National Theatre, and so on and so forth. Then there's a red line that runs through Ijoku, which is in Ondo State, to Agbado, Agege, Yaba, and the rest of the rest. Now, what that does is that it allows you to do a 27-kilometer journey in about 11 minutes when it is completed. So imagine what that does to movement of people, to creation of wealth. It means you are removing more cars from the roads, you are removing pollution, and so on and so forth. So it's becoming an asset class that people are actually interested in. The role of infrastructure development has been documented in several studies. It is well accepted that development of infrastructure is a major determinant of economic growth, and lack of it hinders sustainable growth. I will show you later why Africa is underdeveloped. You will see from the map that you cannot move around Africa, and that's one of the problems. You cannot move around Nigeria easily. It's a problem. And then you can notice that in Europe, for example, you can actually drive, except from England where you have to cross water. And then, but now there's a rail that allows you to live with France, and from France you can drive anywhere you like in Europe. You can just get in your car and just drive. Can you do that in Africa, in Nigeria? Well, the answer is no. And I will show you what that means. So a World Bank study of 39 African countries covering 1990 to 2005 shows that infrastructure development has yielded great payoffs, and I will talk about that later. Now, for those of us that are in government, that makes decisions, and for those of us who are students, it's important for us to understand what COFOG means. It means classification of functions of government. So, in planning our budget, it is always very acrimonious. Everybody wants bigger budget, of course. Every department wants bigger budget. But what has been done, and what we have copied in Lagos, are these just nice social sectors. So we have economic affairs. Now, economic affairs means a Ministry of Works and Infrastructure, Ministry of Transportation, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Ministry of Agri. So any activity that generates economic growth. So we classify it under one, and therefore we budget towards that. So what happens is, for example, last year, so the budget department of the budget ministry will now give us as economic affairs, we are getting 40% of the budget for the state this year. Okay, now those of us who are now heads of parastatals or agencies of those parastatals or ministries or whatever, we now sit down and allocate among ourselves. It's not easy. So we have champions of each of those sectors, and then we now say, well, so that what that means is it allows for intermodal planning. So if there is a jetty here, somebody in the Ministry of Works can plan a road towards it. It doesn't make sense for somebody in waterways to build a jetty there, there's no road. How do you connect? How do you get there? So it allows everybody to sit together and now prioritize within an economic sector. So there's the education. Now, education here doesn't mean just Ministry of Education. It means everything that relates to education. For example, I'll give an example of Lagos. There is a Ministry of Science and Technology. So you might do e-learning center. Well, e-learning center is not just technology, it's about learning, it's about education. So how do you now convert that resources and that knowledge into what students can use? So therefore, everybody that is related to education will now sit together and see how to align. And those 9 sectors are the way that the world is planning their budget and infrastructure. One of the challenges for our country is that at the federal level, we only use 5 of these. Now, I just showed this picture, okay, that shows that direct investment in infrastructure actually stimulates economic activity and affects gross domestic product. It reduces transaction and trade costs, thus improving competitiveness. Now, this is Lagos Badagry Expressway. It used to be 4 lane, and I will talk about it later. some 2 or 3 slides about it. We are expanding it to 10 lanes, and then in the middle, that's where the rail is. So from Marina to mile 12, Marina to mile 2, it will be overhead rail, but from there it goes on grade. Now what that means is that it allows us to actually plan this environment again. But you can see, unfortunately I don't have the slide of the stations. So right now we are building the stations, we are building 6 stations where the rail will actually stop. Now the interesting is that first of all, we take about, at a go, we take about 280,000 people at a go off the road. So I don't know how many cars that will translate to. So you're removing that, and then you're moving them massive in 10 minutes. Of course, people will stop and get down at different sections, and therefore it allows for competitive business, because you're able to move people and goods faster. About 15 years ago, everybody keeps saying, oh, Brazil is borrowing too much money, they will go bankrupt. In fact, there was a popular musician in Nigeria that actually sang this song. But the truth of the matter is, they are now the 5th largest economy in the world. And what did they do? So it says Brazil is the most 5th largest economy. They've overtaken Britain. Britain is now the 6th. And as a matter of fact, they've overtaken France. And by 2025, Sao Paulo will be the 5th wealthiest city in the world, according to the national economists. So in terms of infrastructure, they now have the 3rd largest road network around the world, after the United States and then China. Now, so it's not rocket science that they are growing, the economy is growing because they've invested. Now let's look at Brazil as a country. The land area is 8.5 square kilometer. That's about, Nigeria is 933,000 kilometers, so that's about 6 times the size of Nigeria. It's big in terms of land mass, but they are not, in terms of population, they are not much bigger than us. We are 167 now, they are just 192. It's the 5th most populated country in the world, after China, India, United States, and Indonesia. Their population growth is 1.2 since 2004. They are expected to reach 203 million in 2012. That's sort of 2013 this year. Now, in terms of quality, their roads are honestly better than ours, but they maintain it. They keep maintaining. Therefore, in Brazil today, people don't live from rural area to urban. It doesn't exist anymore. In fact, people are trying to come from the urban now to the rural, and they say, no way, stay where you are. So when you are a rural person now, you live a better life in Brazil than, which is a reverse in our own country. We must get there. Now, what they call this 4-year program, they call it Programa de Aceleração do Crescimento. Now, it's a very important program that allows, and it talks about what I spoke before, about COFOC, that allows various agencies of government that are related to infrastructure to have a budget, just one budget. So the Ministry of Trade Transport, Ministry of Works and Infrastructure, Ministry of Waterfront, Infrastructure, Ministry, whatever happens, we have just one budget. And you all draw from that budget based on coordinated activities and processes. So that you don't build isolated islands. So that island must be connected to something. How do I get there? And that's what it did in Brazil. Now, PAC is likely financed through public sector, and it stimulated economic activities through subsequent investment by private sector. So, private people will not go and put their money if public fund is not there. Private people are interested in their profits. They are capitalists, and so rightly so. So, unless government actually initiates good programs, so there has been many PPPs that have been initiated in this country. Federal government wanted to privatize the airport road. When you get out of Nigeria airport in Lagos, they wanted to concession it, but it failed. It's going to fail because the private sector have not seen the investment in our own stock. But Lagos was able to do it because they've seen what we have spent in terms of infrastructure development. So the federal government must learn from Lagos. Another set in 2010 now came up in terms of PAC, which is PAC 2, and they spent extra 582. Now, if you add that together, 582, well, there are students here that are good in math, so 582 and 236, what that gives you is that's about 918 billion US dollars. That's a lot of money. a lot of money. Now, invested in roads, invested in transportation, and I will show you the data later.